Good afternoon. As we come on the air, we're following breaking news on those Chinese warships off the coast of Australia.
Hello, 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。Australian media are currently whipping the public into a panicked frenzy after 3 People's Liberation Army Navy ships appeared off that country's east coast this week, leaving the Australian government in a sticky situation. For years, the Australian Defence Force has insisted on sailing its vessels and flying its aircraft in a provocative manner around China, which it claims is well within its rights under international law. Well, now that China has decided to give a little bit back, Canberra is forced to take the back foot and explain to their bloodthirsty media that what China is doing is completely legal. But they have a challenge China doesn't face, a dramatic and scaremongering media that will use any opportunity to ramp up the theatrics, in turn making the Australian government look weak and pathetic. What a lovely turn of events. Today we'll take a closer look. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. 3 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels appeared in international waters to the northeast of Australia earlier this week, ultimately making their way down the coast of the country towards Sydney, while remaining 300-odd kilometres away from the coastline, well away from Australia's territorial waters. The ships have sent Australia's media into a frenzy, whipping up fear and tension among the public, and ultimately leading ordinary Australians to view their own government as weak and spineless. It's their own fault, of course, which I'll explain in a minute, but first let's take a quick look at some of the media theatrics.
First tonight, we can bring you newly released images from our Defence Force of 3 Chinese warships now sitting off the coast of Sydney. While their exact location hasn't been disclosed, the ships are around 150 nautical miles off the coast, around the same distance as a trip from Sydney to Canberra, in a move being described as an aggressive demonstration of power.
As 3 Chinese warships are currently marauding along our coastline.
There are concerns this hour they may have been conducting live fire exercises.
The Australian Defence Force is closely monitoring a fleet of Chinese warships which were spotted sailing just 276 kilometres away from Sydney. The vessels were first detected in international waters off the Queensland coast last week and have been travelling down the Australian coastline. Defence Minister Richard Marles described the ship's activity as unusual.
There is no doubt that this is not unprecedented, but an unusual event.
What's got under the bonnet of the Chinese when it comes to us at the moment?
Monitoring every move of 3 Chinese warships. Naval and Air Force assets have been deployed from Australia and New Zealand to watch a frigate, cruiser and replenishment vessel navigating within our nation's exclusive economic zone. The federal government says the presence of the ships, equipped with missile tubes, is not unprecedented but is unusual.
To me, this is positively spooky, Rita. I mean, why on earth would the Chinese have any reason to waste a perfectly good warship sailing this far south unless they had hostile intentions on Australia? I don't know. Maybe they're on their way to take over Tasmania or something. I don't know.
China sending PLA Navy vessels so far south is an extremely rare move and comes around a week after a Royal Australian Air Force spy plane actually entered Chinese airspace around Xisha Qundao in the South China Sea, the type of provocative display that Australia has undertaken in Chinese waters for decades. This forced China's PLA Air Force to take emergency action, releasing flares in front of the spy plane as it sped towards the Chinese island, an internationally recognised signal that warns aircraft to immediately change course. Australia was not happy, issuing a press release calling the move unsafe and unprofessional. But right at the end of the Australian statement is the key point that Australia's government and media failed to realise, that they are the provocateurs here. For decades, the statement said, the Australian Defence Force has undertaken maritime surveillance activities in the region, in China that is, and does so in accordance with international law, exercising the right to freedom of navigation and overflight in international waters and airspace. For decades, and this is exactly why China has an issue. Why do you have to constantly come here and harass China, provocatively speeding towards and through Chinese territory? And that statement from last week, which Australian media heavily publicised, mentioned one thing that got them in trouble this week. I'll read that part again. They said their spying around China is in accordance with international law, exercising the right to freedom of navigation and overflight in international waters and airspace. So then, when 3 Chinese Navy vessels sail 300 odd kilometres away from Australia's coastline, the Australian government can do nothing but take the same angle they did last week, admitting that China is just doing something Australia has done for decades around China. As mentioned multiple times in Australian media, Chinese vessels around their country is something that is extremely rare, but it's something they do to China very, very regularly. Watch Australian Prime Minister Albanese explain that China is well within the confines of international law.
Well, China issued, in accordance with practice, an alert that it would be conducting these activities, including the potential use of live fire. It's outside of Australia's exclusive economic zone. Well, this is activity that has occurred in waters consistent with international law. The notification has occurred. According to Defence, there has been no imminent risk of danger to any Australian assets or New Zealand assets.
And this, of course, has led ordinary Australians to view their own government as weak and feeble, which, of course, is all their own fault. J Manila 289 commented under a 9 News Australia report. 150 miles from Sydney, the Australian government is gutless and pathetic. Alex Palmer added, "Look at that, Albanese and Labor love the CCP regime." Sally Sent said, "Albanese should come out and make a strong statement that Australia no longer will tolerate the bullying by China." Some, though, can see through the media frenzy to the reality of the situation, like Leon, who wrote, "Suck it up. Aussie warships navigate through the Taiwan Strait regularly." Another added, "China just wants to tell the Australians, don't send your warships to waters near China. This is probably the only way Australians understand." And Sui Lim wrote, "China is just responding to Australia provocations of flying P-38 and sailing warships into or near the China border or coastlines." This backlash against Australia's government via its own bloodthirsty media is something Canberra should keep in mind if they want to keep provoking China by consistently sending their Air Force and Navy to China and claiming that such provocative actions are in accordance with international law. Because then China can do exactly the same thing, with one massive difference. China's media will not make China look weak and feeble in the process. So here's my message to Australia. Unless you want more backlash from your own public by way of regular friendly visits from China's PLA that will make you look bad in the eyes of your own people, stop your decades-long provocation and intimidation of China. Keep your Navy and Air Force in your own backyard. And on that note, that will be it for today, you guys. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Will Australia's government think twice about harassing China with its armed forces in the future? And will the backlash from its own media be cause for the government in Canberra to reflect on its own actions? Let me know down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.